wanted to be thorough. Adolphe crossed to the desk and examined the leather tomes for himself. Every ledger since 1886 up through last year. They didn't get this year's because it's locked in my desk upstairs. For trained police, they treated your father's property with no more respect than common thieves, whatever you say. I nodded. They acted like thugs, I won't deny it. The staff were scared out of their wits. I'm only glad they didn't try to interfere with the search and get themselves in trouble to protect us. The police had their warrant, and I'm certain they planned it deliberately for an evening we'd be away, so we wouldn't have the chance to hide anything. I can only imagine how they must have felt. A miserable business, the lot of it. Papa flung himself into his chair and rubbed his eyes in exhaustion. I placed a hand on his shoulder. You'll have to speak to them all in the morning. Don't just assure them that you in no way hold them responsible for the actions of a few zealous detectives, but rather thank them for their cooperation with the authorities in a manner that corroborates the innocence of the Eiffel name and your company. Adolphe stifled a growl at the idea of his father-in-law, employer, and mentor having to smooth over such a thing with the staff, but Papa understood what had to be done. Quite right, I'm sure. You know I am, I said, my eyes fixed on my husband rather than my father. But I'd very much like to know one thing. And what's that? Adolphe said, in a tone that betrayed that he was more than a little frightened of what query I would pose. Will they find what they're looking for? Adolphe and Papa exchanged glances that confessed the truth they were loath to speak. The accusations against Papa and the company might be overblown, but they weren't baseless. I fought against the urge to hurl the snifter against the brick of the fireplace, but restrained myself. The time might come when we'd regret the loss of expensive crystal that could fetch a price. I gripped the mantel and gritted my teeth. It might not be my face that had been plastered across every scandal rag from Cherbourg to Marseille. It wasn't my name that would be sullied, but it might as well have been. I'd sworn an oath to Papa years ago, and I hadn't faltered a single step in that time. I would not fail him in his hour of greatest need. The sacrifices had been too great to stumble now. But try though I might, it might not be enough to save that which mattered most to him, his legacy. Chapter 2. September 1877. Le Valois-Perret, Hauts-de-Seine, Île-de-France, France. As was often the case after a long day, and this had been the longest of my life, my eyes trailed to the massive tapestry on the far wall of the sitting room. I'd stared at it so often that even the smallest detail was burned into my memory. It was a quaint pastoral scene that had been woven 100 years before by Papa's family when they settled in Paris. The grass was composed of a dozen shades of green. The sky was a melody of countless blues. Even the shepherdess's dress spanned every nuance of pink available to the imagination. Each strand of thread had been chosen with careful deliberation to make the scene seem as realistic as if it had been committed to canvas with the brush of a master painter. I imagined my great to the third degree grandfather overseeing the work on this very tapestry, perfectly content to have a seamstress remove hours' worth of stitches if the colors weren't precisely right. Papa had to have come by his exacting nature somehow, and it served him well. In architecture, there was even less room for imperfection. One botched calculation could cost untold lives. At least the worst is over. My head, and the thoughts inside it, pivoted to where bonne Maman Eiffel rested on a plush fauteuil. She was a formidable woman, with a solemn face and shrewd eyes that were not tempered with kindness like Papa's. She leaned forward in her seat,